Have you ever been struggling? Really struggling, but when someone asks, "Do you need help?" you smile and say, "No, I'm good," even though your brain is on fire and your soul is carrying grocery bags it didn't sign up for? Or maybe you don't even wait for someone to ask. You just handle it, always, quietly, alone. And people around you think you're strong, capable, independent, while inside you're exhausted. Here's the funny part. Society often praises people who never ask for help. We call them self-made, resilient, tough, the kind of people who handle their business. But psychology sees something deeper going on, something more complex. Because never asking for help isn't just a habit, it's a pattern. And patterns usually have a story behind them. So if you're someone who would rather Google your way out of a crisis at 3 a.m. than text a friend, or you'd rather struggle silently than risk feeling like a burden, stay with me. Because this video isn't about judging that instinct, it's about understanding it. Let me paint a picture. Imagine carrying a heavy backpack. At first, it's fine. You're strong. You've carried worse. But over time, the straps dig into your shoulders. Your posture changes. You start leaning forward just to keep walking. People around you might say, "Wow, you're really disciplined," without realizing you're slowly bending under the weight. And here's the key detail. No one told you that you had to carry it alone. You just decided that you should. That decision usually starts early. For many people who never ask for help, independence wasn't a personality trait they were born with. It was a solution, a response, sometimes even a survival strategy. Maybe you grew up in an environment where help wasn't reliable. You asked once, maybe twice, and nothing happened. Or worse, you were made to feel weak for asking. So your brain learned a simple rule. Relying on others is risky. Relying on myself is safer. Psychologists call this an adaptive behavior. At the time, it made sense. Your nervous system wasn't trying to make you lonely. It was trying to protect you. When you stop asking for help, you reduce the chance of disappointment, rejection, or feeling indebted. You stay in control. And control feels calm, especially to a brain that learned chaos early on. There's also something else hiding underneath this pattern: identity. If you're the one who never asks for help, chances are you're the one people depend on, the problem solver, the reliable one, the strong friend. Over time, that role becomes part of who you are. And asking for help doesn't just feel inconvenient, it feels like a threat to your identity. If you need help, then who are you? The one who has it together or the one who doesn't? Your brain likes consistency. You would rather keep a painful identity than face an unfamiliar one. So you keep going. You keep saying, "I've got it," even when you don't. Neuroscience actually backs this up. When we act in ways that align with our self-image, the brain's reward system lights up. Dopamine flows. It feels right. But when we act against that image, like asking for help when we see ourselves as independent, it creates cognitive dissonance, a kind of mental itch. Uncomfortable. So we avoid it. And here's where things get really interesting. Many people assume that those who don't ask for help are confident, but psychologically, it's often the opposite. Not insecurity in the obvious sense, but a quiet, high-functioning kind. The kind that whispers, "If I ask, I'll be a burden." Or, "If I can't do this alone, maybe I'm not enough." That voice doesn't come from arrogance, it comes from self-worth being tied to usefulness. If you've ever felt most lovable when you're giving, fixing, or supporting others, then needing support yourself can feel like breaking an unspoken contract. There's a subtle shame there. Not loud, not dramatic, just enough to keep you silent. Research on attachment styles sheds light on this. People with avoidant attachment patterns tend to value self-reliance to an extreme degree. They learned early on that closeness and dependency could lead to pain, so they internalized the belief that needing others is dangerous. Asking for help triggers vulnerability, and vulnerability triggers alarm bells in the nervous system. So instead of reaching out, they double down on independence. They become experts at coping alone. From the outside, it looks impressive. From the inside, it can feel isolating. And let's be honest, there's also a moral narrative in many cultures that glorifies doing it all yourself. Hustle culture, grind culture. The idea that needing help is a flaw rather than a human condition. If you absorb that message long enough, your brain stops seeing help as a resource and starts seeing it as a failure.
But here's the paradox. Humans didn't survive by being lone wolves. We survived by cooperating, by sharing food, by watching each other's backs. Your brain is literally wired for connection. When you receive support, oxytocin, the bonding hormone, is released. Stress hormones like cortisol decrease, your nervous system calms. Asking for help isn't weakness, it's regulation. Yet, for someone who never asks for help, receiving support can feel oddly uncomfortable, even when it's offered freely, even when it's genuine. Compliments feel awkward, assistance feels intrusive. You might have the urge to immediately repay it, balance the scales, or downplay your need. It's really not that big of a deal. That's your brain trying to restore equilibrium, to avoid feeling exposed. Sometimes not asking for help is also about perfectionism. If you ask for help, you risk being seen mid-process, messy, incomplete, still figuring it out. For a perfectionistic mind, that's terrifying. It would rather present the final result than let anyone see the draft. So you isolate during the struggle and reappear once you've solved it, alone. But that comes at a cost. Over time, always being the one who doesn't ask for help can quietly drain you. Emotional fatigue builds, resentment can sneak in, not because others didn't help, but because they didn't read your mind. And loneliness can exist even in a room full of people, especially when no one truly knows what you're carrying. What's heartbreaking is that many people who never ask for help are actually deeply empathetic. They're very aware of others' burdens, which is exactly why they don't want to add to them. They imagine their struggles as weights they shouldn't place on someone else's shoulders. But they forget that relationships aren't about equal weight at every moment. They're about shared strength over time. Think about it this way. You wouldn't judge a phone for needing to be charged. You wouldn't say, wow, this phone is so weak, it needs electricity again. You understand that energy is something you replenish, not something you prove you have. Humans are the same. Asking for help is a form of recharging, not a confession of deficiency. The shift doesn't happen overnight. If you've spent years being self-reliant, your nervous system won't suddenly feel safe opening up, and that's okay. Growth doesn't start with forcing yourself to ask for help dramatically. Sometimes it starts with allowing it, not deflecting when someone offers, not minimizing your struggle, just letting support exist without immediately justifying it. There's also power in realizing that asking for help doesn't erase your strength, it reveals it in a different form. It takes courage to be seen, it takes self-awareness to admit limits, and it takes trust to believe that others can show up for you without strings attached. If you're someone who never asks for help, there's nothing broken about you. Your behavior makes sense in the context of your experiences. It protected you once, it shaped you into someone capable, resilient, and resourceful. But protection strategies aren't meant to run your entire life, they're meant to evolve. You don't have to stop being independent. You don't have to become someone who leans on others for everything. This isn't about swinging to the opposite extreme. It's about flexibility, choice, knowing that you can carry things alone, and also knowing you don't always have to. So maybe the next time you feel overwhelmed and your instinct is to say, I'll handle it, pause for a second. Ask yourself a gentler question. Not, can I do this alone, but do I need to? That small shift can change everything. If this resonated with you, you're not alone, ironically. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Do you recognize yourself in this pattern? And if you want to keep exploring the psychology behind human behavior, consider subscribing. There's a lot more beneath the surface, and you don't have to explore it by yourself.